Welcome to A Double
and
Dice
with your host Kim
and Jocelyn.
Pour your favorite beverage,
pull up a comfy chair,
because we are ready to roll.
Welcome to episode 30 of A Double and Dice, and today we're continuing our team building series. I was going to say last week, but not really last week. Our last episode, we talked about win conditions, and today we're going to be talking about ramp. And Jocelyn, can you define ramp for us?
Well, a ramp is typically an angle on a slight incline so that you don't have to go up and down stairs. Oh, that's okay, not the ramp we're talking about today? Dice Masters ramp?
Yes.
Okay. So ramp in Dice Masters, in my opinion, is something that it's a way for you to get your win condition or your whatever pieces you want to buy, whether it's your win condition or not, but it's a support for your win condition. So let's say your win condition costs 6. If you're familiar with the game, you know that you're typically going to roll 4 dice at a time. So you need to find a way to get up to that 6 cost, or 5 cost, or 9 cost, or whatever the cost is of the die you want to purchase, and that's ramp, right? Right. So that's easy, right?
It's pretty easy. I mean, some other people refer it to as prep, or it's part of ramping.
Well, yeah,
it's
prep
a keyword in ramping.
Prep could be part of ramping. So essentially, in order to get to the die, you need to purchase. So we talked about some dice last time, right? So if we talk about the similar dice for the purposes of this. So we talked about a Becky Lynch straight fire. She's a 4 cost. We talked about Iceman, right on schedule, who's also 4 cost.
4 cost, yeah.
So you roll 4 dice, and you can purchase that, okay? But maybe there's a way to do it more effectively or do it faster or purchase multiples of them if that's something you'd like. So, for example, wouldn't it be nice to have multiple Becky Lynch straight fires over crushing coming at you? Maybe not being on the receiving end of it, but maybe being on the player end of it, possibly. So you want to get, more dice. You want to get more dice to make your purchasing. So there's different ways you can do that in the game. To your point, Kim, part of that could be prepping. So in Modern, you have the ability to use a couple of different, typically global abilities to help you prep dice, which means putting more dice in your prep area to roll next turn. Right?
Right. So when you grab your 4, you'll be grabbing what's also in your prep. So it could be 5 dice you're rolling, 6, depending on how much you're putting over there.
So what things would you use to prep? Like, what are the abilities that could help you prep dice, Kim?
Like as in globals, as you mentioned?
Yeah, so I think there's globals and there's some action dice that would do it as well.
Yeah, there's some cards some character abilities that might do it as well. So we'll start with globals. One right off the bat, I guess in Modern most people would use is the global on Villainous Pack.
Right. So what does that say?
So the global is pay a mask. I'm sorry, I have to scroll all the way down because it starts with V. I don't know why I started with V. Of course, it started at the bottom.
Yeah. Why didn't you start with Atlas?
I know. Atlas was actually staring at me.
Okay.
But
let's not confuse things for new players.
Well, it's the most one that probably most people use is Villainous Pack. So we'll start with that one. So Villainous Pack is actually a basic action card. And the global, it reads, is pay a mask once per turn. On your turn, if you have no dice in your prep area, you may prep a die from your bag. So this one is a bit of more to it to prep a die. It's only on your turn. You cannot do it on your opponent.
Right.
Turn.
So let's say you didn't want to take up a basic action slot. You could use Atlas for the same thing.
Yeah,
same idea. So Atlas, purged of Pim particles, which is from the what set is this?
That's Justice Lightning.
Justice like lightning. So his global is on one side of his card, so you have to make sure you don't flip him if you purchase him. And it says global pay a fist once per turn. On your turn, prep a die from your bag. So that's similar to Villainous Pact, except it doesn't have that additional condition of there can't be anything else in your prep area.
Right.
Right.
So you have to be careful when you're doing that. There's Professor X.
Okay.
That allows you to actually prep 2 psychic dice from your use pile. That's also a mask. Yes. Once during your turn, you may prep up to 2 psychic dice from your use pile, which is very similar to also Walk with Elias, which is also a basic action that pretty much does the same thing.
Yeah. And then the other one I can think of is Counter-Strike.
Yep.
Which is pay 1 generic. Once during your turn, you may prep a sidekick die from your use pile.
I like that one because you're not restricted to an energy, but on the downfall, it's only on your turn.
Well, all the ones we've talked about so far,
are. Except
but
for
what isn't?
Atlantis. Now we can go to Atlantis.
No, go to Xanathar first.
I want to go to Xanathar? All right.
Yeah.
All right. So Xanathar, which I don't really see much play on this one, but Xanathar is pay a generic, 1 generic. Once per turn, you may prep an NPC, also known as a psychic dice, from your use pile. So that you can do on your turn and on your opponent's turn.
Right. So from that perspective, because all the other ones, Walk with Elias, Professor X, Atlas, Villainous Pact, you can only do that on your turn, even Counter-Strike. Whereas Xanathar, you can do on your turn and on your opponent's turn.
Yep.
Okay, so now let's talk about some action dice that will allow you to do this.
Right, so
go ahead and talk about Atlantis.
Atlantis, okay. So Atlantis actually is a twofold. If you pay Fist and Shield, you may move a psychic die from your use pile to your prep, and you can field a different psychic die from your use pile to your field zone.
Yeah, and that one is not qualified by once per turn. So you can do that as many times as you can pay for it.
Yes.
So all of these things, what they have in common is that they allow you to put additional dice, typically sidekicks. But if you're prepping for your bag, it could be something else, which would be Atlas or Villainous Pact. But typically, otherwise, it's sidekicks, and those can go into your prep area. So on your next turn, you're rolling more dice. So that is one way of ramping. Let's talk about Atlantis action die.
Oh, what it actually does. Now, which one are you referring to? City and Stronghold?
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay. So City and Stronghold is a 2 cost, and that reads, move any number of dice you rolled during your roll and reroll step from your reserve pool to your prep area. So you would have to purchase Atlantis, pull it, roll it on its face to get this ability. And if you hit an asterisk, you also prep a die from your egg.
Yeah. So that is a way you could buy this 2 cost shield die. And then if you rolled stuff that you didn't want, or if you rolled something and it didn't roll and you wanted to save it for another turn, or if you just wanted to take all of your dice and put them in your prep area, so you had a big turn next turn, that is a way to do it. I think it's James from Dice Masters United, DM United, play that with a Thanos team. And that was how he would get all of his sidekicks into his prep area plus the Atlantis die, and he would be able to do like full ramp and purchase an 8 cost Thanos on like turn 3.
I've actually never played with this card.
No,
I've never tried it. No,
it's fun.
I've used it for the global, but I've actually never purchased to actually do its effect or its ability.
I like the other one too, but it's a 4 cost. But I don't know that that's really ramp, so we probably shouldn't talk about that. So those are some ways of ramping and prepping, right? So there's also ways that you can ramp without prepping, which I would say would typically be also through basic actions. So I'd be thinking of something like investigation. right? So investigation is a 3-cost basic action. And this could also be considered churn. So maybe I think we kind of have to talk about ramp and churn together, Kim.
Okay.
So ramp is getting more dice in your prep area so you can buy a big thing. Churn is rolling through your dice faster, whether that's through prepping them or through rolling them in a different way, so that you can get through your dice faster to get what you're looking for. Okay? So investigation kind of hits both of those things. It's a 3-cost basic action, and it says draw and roll 2 dice. Place them in your reserve pool. So it gives you ramp because you get to draw and roll 2 additional dice, but it also gives you churn because it helps you churn through your bag faster.
Yeah, because you're pulling more dice out of your bag.
Yeah. There's another one that I am writing a Into the Shadows article about right now, and that one's called Into Battle! ! Which is from the Battle for Ultramar set, the Warhammer 40k set, and it says prep 2 dice from your bag. If both are psychic dice, prep an additional die, and on a burst phase, it says roll all dice prepped this way. So it's a 4-cost. You could prep up to 3 dice, and if you roll the burst phase, then you could roll them. So that's an interesting one for both ramp and churn. And then the other one I was thinking of is Power Almighty.
Okay.
So Power Almighty is also a 4-cost.
Mm-hmm.
And this one says spin each of your active character dice up 1 level. For each active character die you could not spin up, prep 1 die from your bag.
Yeah, I mean, if you have all psychics in the field, they can't be rolled up. So you could potentially prep as many psychic dice you have in the field. Yeah. Which could be a lot.
So, yeah. I think with some of these, though, you do have to be careful because you could potentially prep so many dice you might take bag burn.
Which we'll get into. Which we'll have to get into what bag burn is.
But, so bag burn, I guess let's just define it now, Kim.
Okay.
So bag burn is when you go to do your clear and draw step as part of the beginning of your turn, and you draw 4 dice from your bag. If you can't draw 4 dice, then you would lose a life for every die you can't draw. So if you're supposed to draw 4, and you can only draw 3, you would lose a life and gain a generic energy. So it's something to be aware of if you're ramping and churning too much in particular. Mm-hmm. Another really great way to ramp and churn can be through the use of swarm. What's swarm, Kim?
I missed one basic action that can help with prepping.
Sure, go for it.
Thrown brick.
Yeah, thrown brick is a good one.
So thrown brick is it's a basic action. It's a 2-cost. Once you roll it, you pretty much hit any character. It doesn't have to be your opponent's or yours. Their defense, and you get to prep without KOing them, though. You cannot KO with them. So you don't want to hit a psychic. So if you don't KO that character, you prep thrown brick, and you get to prep a die from your bag. Mm-hmm. So and you get to actually choose one. It won't be actually a psychic, so it's one coming out of your bag. And if you get multiple in that turn, you could potentially have 4 dice sitting in your prep area.
Yeah, thrown brick's really good for that. There's also Shocking Grasp, which is in the Dungeons and Dragons set. Trouble in Adventures in Waterdeep, whichever one is the campaign box. Mm-hmm. It's sort of the opposite of thrown brick, which is deal 1 damage to target character die. If that die is KO'd, then you prep a die.
Yeah, right. So you can actually hit your own psychic and prep your psychic, which gives you more. Which I think people tend to do more with Shocking Grasp. If they can, of course. Or you're giving
deal 1 damage to target character die. If that character is KO'd by this damage, you may put this die into your prep area. So it doesn't prep an additional die, like thrown brick does, but you KO something. So the idea with Shocking Grasp is you field your own sidekick, KO it, and then you get to prep your Shocking Grasp die.
Yep. Yeah. So more
Or-
ramp for you, or if you really want to give your opponent, an extra die to roll next turn.
Yeah, just depends.
Yeah, it depends on the
okay.
situation. So swarm.
So swarm. Yep.
Swarm is when a character is active with the swarm keyword. If you draw the same die during your clear and draw step, you get to draw and roll an extra die. So if you had Poxwalker, who has a swarm on it, out in the field zone, you draw Poxwalker. During your clear and draw step, you get to draw another die from your bag. If you draw another Poxwalker, you get to swarm again and draw another die. So you keep doing that pretty much until it stops, or you stop getting that character. With the swarm.
Yeah, so that's another way. There's also a new keyword that came out in Infinity Gauntlet that could help you with sort of ramping and churning, which is the rush keyword.
And
I say that this one in this way because I still find rush a little bit complicated. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to refer you to the DM North YouTube channel, youtube.com/dmNorthTV, where we have a fantastic Keyword Corner episode that explains how rush works. And I'm not going to attempt to explain it here because I do not have it in front of me and I still find it rather complicated. I think the easiest way to explain it would be it's sort of like Swarm, except you don't need to have the die active. You have to actually draw the rush die with whatever it's rushing for. So if it says, this is rushing for bolts, let's say, so this character rushes for bolts. If you draw that character and a bolt character die at the same time, you would draw an additional die.
Correct. That's pretty.
But it gets a little confusing depending on how many rush characters you're using, how many different types of rush there are, and what rushes off what. Yes. So that is a little bit tricky. I think, is it Ronathan? PXPX, Kim? Is he the one that was playing the rush team everywhere?
I don't know.
I think it was. Possibly. So Ronathan PXPX, I'm pretty sure has a YouTube channel, and he's been playing a lot of online Dice Masters, and he's got a rush team that he was playing with, at least in 2020, that he's got a pretty good handle on rush. So he's like, as far as I'm concerned, he's the rush expert. When it comes to Dice Masters rush.
Well, I'm pretty sure you have it. It just, as you said, it'll get complicated if you rush a character. Well, you draw a character with rushed fists, and then you draw a character after that with rush bolts, and then it's like it can get confusing but watch the videos. We're not
watch
experts
the Keyword
on rush.
Corner video, check out Ronathan PXPX's channel, and there's some stuff there. I'm sure that at some point I will make an attempt at trying to figure it out. But yeah, so that's sort of my thing. So those are a bunch of different ways that you can ramp and also churn through your bag that are available in the modern format.
Right.
Is there anything else that we didn't cover off, Kim? Ramp and churn?
For ramping? Not that I can think of. I think the most stuff we hit were most common.
Yeah.
Cards.
I'm sure there's things we didn't think of, but from a high level, entry level to the game perspective, those are some of the ways that you could ramp and or churn through your bag, or both.
Yeah, and there are abilities, like actual character abilities, that allows you to prep dice and stuff like that. So it's not only restricted to globals or actions. If you have a slot, you can definitely look at card abilities that can do it as well.
Yeah, like there's look at the Macho Man Randy Savage, Macho Madness, Macho Man. When he's active, whenever you draw and roll any number of dice outside your clear and draw step, excluding dice drawn from this ability or copies of it, draw and roll an extra die.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's Macho Man Randy Savage. Oh yeah. While Macho Man Randy Savage is active, players draw an extra die during their clear and draw step.
Mankind, when he's active, whenever your opponent preps one or more dice outside their clear and draw step, you may prep a die from your bag.
Yeah. So there's character abilities that do that as
Yes.
well, that help you prep, and prepping essentially helps you get to what it is you want to do faster.
Yes.
I guess, Kim, what we probably should talk about that we haven't really touched on, since we just talked about all kinds of global abilities, is what's a global ability and when can you use it?
Okay, so a global ability is, I guess it's a separate text written on a card, and usually that text is written in red. Pretty much it says global on it and written in red. Any card you see with that type of, I guess color, because it says red, right? Or it says global, usually you can use that ability, obviously, depending on, and anybody can use it. Both players can use it. It's not restricted to you.
I think that's why it's called a global, right? Any
Yeah.
player can use that ability, so it doesn't have to be on your team. It can be on your opponent's team.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, but as we were going through some of them, it can be restricted to your turn, or you can do it on your turn or on your opponent's turn as well.
Yep. And there's technically 3 opportunities for you to use a global when you're playing a game. So when you have your game, you have your main step. So you as the active player have the opportunity to use globals, and then you pass priority to your opponent, who also has the opportunity to use globals, and they pass back. And technically it's supposed to be 1 for 1.
Right.
So
if you do something else during your main step that you may have forgotten, or you decided to do something else, you have to pass back priority again. Give the opponent an opportunity before you actually end your main step.
Yeah, and to end the global step, your opponent plus yourself both have to elect not to do any more globals.
Right.
Okay. Then you have the opportunity in the attack step to use a global ability. So it happens, the order of effects is you would declare attackers, your opponent declares blockers, and then you move into the global window. There's subsets of that based on certain abilities, but generally that's sort of the high level. Attack, block, globals. And same way, active player goes first. Opposing player is given an opportunity to go, again, 1 global at a time. But if the opposing player says no global and you don't do a global, then global window closes. Okay?
Correct.
And then there's one other time that you can use a global, and that's when you have something called a reactive global. So ramp globals that we've talked about here are not typically reactive, but there are global abilities that are reactive that say, for example, if X happens, right? If a character is damaged, you can use this. The Iron Lad global is an example of that, which actually technically is kind of prep. So it's relevant. Once per turn, pay a bolt when a source you control deals damage to a character, die, or player. If you do, prep a die from your bag. So there's another prep global that you could use, and that one is actually reactive. It wouldn't happen in a global window in your main step. It wouldn't happen in a global window in the attack step. It would actually happen after the global window when damage is being done, which makes it reactive.
Yes, because damage is dealt after all the globals and everything is finished. Then damage is dealt, and then you can trigger this global after.
Yeah, so those are the 3 different ways you can trigger globals, and aside from the Iron Lad global that we just talked about, most of the other globals could be done either in your main step or in your attack step in the global window, and then Iron Lad would be the example of the reactive prep global.
I always forget about that one, because that's almost a guaranteed prep, especially if you're attacking, or if if you're on the opposite side and you're blocking. You're taking damage either way. You can always prep if you have a bolt left over.
Okay, so I think we've covered a lot of stuff about team building in this episode, Kim. What do you think?
Yeah, a lot of ramping.
A lot of churning. A lot of globaling. So with that said, we would love to hear from you on how you like to ramp. What is your favorite way of ramping? Keep in mind that we only talked about modern abilities. There are some golden abilities that are quite beloved. But we all know that I like to play modern. So
Yes. So this whole series is based on modern era, not
yeah. So yeah, current modern. But what is your method of ramp? What is your method of churn? Do you find those things are different or the same? Do they go hand in hand the way we feel that they do? And what is how do you like to do it? So let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. So we had quite a bit of feedback, didn't we? This past
we did. The mailbag was quite
overflowing. We got
it was heavy. Yeah. But before we go into last week's episode, I want to touch back on something we forgot to mention on the previous episode. Because we got a really great email from Andy May back at the beginning of March, prior to Dice Social, prior to our last episode, and we missed that one on our last episode. So I wanted to go over that one, Kim, first, okay?
Yep.
So this was a very well thought out email, and Andy, we really appreciate you sending us this message and sharing your thoughts with us. I'm not going to read the whole thing for word for word, but in general, he had suggested, first off, with the upcoming Dice Social, which was the March St. Patrick's Day theme, as some others did, that we should have the first player roll 4 dice, which we did. So thank you for that, Andy. Yeah. We do appreciate
Thanks for bringing that
up. It was one of the first times we actually heard it, and then we heard it from a bunch of other people. We're like, oh yeah, light bulb. So we did that. So thank you. So the second was he talked a little bit about the subject of delays. So we'd been talking about delays and sort of the general apathy of the online community, at least, about Dice Masters in the last little while. We talked about that on a few episodes ago. So he had a few things that he wanted to sort of bring forward as far as that got. And I thought it was really insightful. So one of the things that he came up with was that when we play a collectible game and we fall in love with it, we always run the risk that there will be a point where the game will stop being collected. And that's a point that he thinks is striking dread into the hearts of some of the diehard players. So, I mean, if you think about it, we've just seen that happen with a bunch of stuff, right? So not Dice Masters. Dice Masters is still out there, but Star Wars Destiny, which was supposed to kill Dice Masters, right? Dice Masters is dying. Star Wars Destiny's here. Is no longer being distributed, right? The Transformers TCG, that was something that was really popular there for a while. That was I don't know that was collectible necessarily, but it was a game, whatever. And they stopped making that, right? So, you think if it's not going to be available anymore, that's what you're worried about. And if we keep seeing these delays and the limited communication from WizKids, people are worried that might happen with this, right? He mentioned a couple of other things that were supposed to kill the game, but of course didn't, which was going from collectible to living card game, aka you buy the campaign box and you get everything. There was a conversation about several years ago, instead of having a lot of delays, they launched a whole bunch of stuff right back to back, which you wouldn't think would be a problem, except your wallet might not like it. And that could be a problem. And then, some sets, again, historically, where it seemed like there might have been a lack of pre-release testing, that meant that the sets weren't either effective enough or were overly effective, and there were cards that were OP. So that is one thing that he said, and he said when you look at that and you look at all those things, Dice Masters is definitely a survivor as far as collectible card games go. Right. But we also see people all the time selling their games, selling their cards, selling their dice because their local play group has dried up. And he thinks that that's where a lot of the fear comes from, because these people that we interact with now, you and me, everyone that plays this game, you have a group of friends that you play this with, people that you have found as, equals, people that you enjoy to do something with, your tribe, for lack of a better word, like your group, I hate the word clique, your friends. You make friends playing this game.
Yeah.
Right? And you don't want to lose the game because you could be afraid that if you lose the game, you might lose your friends. Right?
Right.
So that could be something there. And he talks about, he's built all these friendships with people that he's met through Dice Masters, and you get to interact with them in person in pre-COVID times, and hopefully one time there will be a post-COVID times. And there may be a fear that as the product gets delayed or drops off solicits, or there's not communication from WizKids, that's going to happen to this game. What happened to Transformers? What happened to Destiny? That something might actually finally kill Dice Masters. And that is something that could be, causing some of the anxiety within the community. So I really like that Andy took the time to send us this email. I really appreciate it. And then he added at the end, keep up the great work. He enjoys seeing the podcast drop into his feed every second Monday. So
thank you.
So what do you think, Kim?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Like, I never actually thought of it that way. Until he brought it up. So
yeah, I mean, I think I had some of those thoughts, but I certainly could not articulate them as well as Andy did, and appreciate that he shared that with us. So let us know what you think. Are those some of the things that are fearful for you, or thoughts that you might have about this game? And keep in mind that Kim and I will probably run Dice Socials for as long as we can, no matter
forever.
What. I can't promise forever, Kim. But for a long time.
We'll just start our... No, I won't go into that. Start our own Dice Masters campaign.
No. We will get there. Product will come. Yes. As we are recording this, what is it called? The Ever Given, the ship that was stuck in the Suez Canal, has finally been released. So that's where I'm assuming the Dice Masters are. They must be on the Ever Given, right? It's been stuck in the Suez Canal for 5 days. Worldwide
on the slowest
shipping
boat ever.
The entire world is like now 10 days behind on shipping. Like, it's insane. They're saying it's going to take months for the backlog to be cleared, and shipping prices are going to go up because the ship got stuck in the canal. So anyway, I'm saying, now there's a reason.
I hope nothing of ours is on that ship.
I don't know.
Who knows?
I'm pretty sure most of the stuff I buy is already at the Amazon warehouse. So,
but no, thank you, Andy, for taking the time to write that.
Yeah. So that refers back to an episode from a couple episodes ago. I don't remember specifically what number. I'd have to go back and look. But thanks for that. We got a bunch of other things, as I mentioned. The mailbag was heavy. So let's talk some of the smaller stuff here. So I heard from our friend Nick, Jackalope Spam. He sent a message that said, as a follow-up to today's podcast, which was 2 weeks ago at the time of recording this, I would be interested in hearing some of your and Kim's favorite WinCons to play with and how you've built the team around it. I'm just always a fan of hearing the team building insight. So I've read this. I don't think Kim had read it yet. So I'll preamble here in that I don't necessarily have a set way I build a team. And what we're trying to do with this episode series that we're doing right now is, bring up a bunch of different pieces that you need to build a team, and then you can kind of put them together like a puzzle or a Tetris, the way that works for you. But as far as win conditions go, I would say that I typically prefer direct damage, but then I feel bad about it.
Why?
Well, if I'm playing casually and I'm playing a direct damage team, sometimes my opponent will not have a counter, and then I feel like I'm just like running away with it, and it's not a fair fight. Whereas if I'm playing in a competitive event, I know that my opponent is probably going to have a way to deal with my direct damage, and I feel less badly about it. Case in point, in the last Dice Social, I was playing a villains team, which I don't normally play something that is themed villains, and there was some direct damage in there, and it was a little bit strong, especially for Dice Social. So I certainly slowed it down and tried to play it in a different way so it wasn't quite so overpowered in the format. But I had no idea that it would be like that. So I'm trying to think of any of the cards that were on my Dice Social team right now. There was a Poison Ivy that did damage when you fielded a villain, perhaps. That was one of the things.
Yeah,
Anyway, so I typically like direct damagey things. I try to play around with that. The Atom, was it Professor? That was kind of big back in 2019 before the energy field errata, and he said when he spins up, he deals 2 damage to target opponent.
Okay.
So that was one. I did a little bit of Icemanning. The team that I took to Iceman right on schedule, which is we talked about in the last episode, is win conditions. In 2019 to Worlds, I took a collector Nobby team. So Nobby is direct damage. He's Norman Osborn. And he says, when fielded, I guess I have played villain teams before. When fielded, deal damage to your opponent equal to the number of villains in the field, both yours and your opponent's. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the effect. So that was something we did. I also liked using the collector with the Noxious Blightbringer, which did damage to your opponent when you fielded the Noxious Blightbringer based on how many energy symbols they had in their reserve pool. So I like direct damagey things.
All right.
What about you?
I think I'm a bit
Orbital
of both.
Strike.
Yes. I think I'm a bit of both. I would say maybe more on the non. Yeah, I don't know. It might be a good mix. Well, as Jocelyn just said, my favorite go-to is Orbital Strike, which is non-combat damage. Okay, so that's if you add up all the attack values on all the dice that you roll back, you deal that much damage to your opponent's life. So that's non-combat damage. So that's happening before you even attack. I think that's my favorite to play, and I still tweaking that team really. There's always some other cards that you can use, so it's not like it's a one team build kind of thing. So
yeah,
I still like to tweak with that with the Orbital Strike, and Orbital Strike is a basic action. So if you've never tried it, you should try it. And I do like I do like the non-combat damage, and I still like to dabble in some Overcrush and Unblockable. Mm-hmm. I think I tend to usually build teams around that. But using
you like to build teams around things that are a little bit different.
Yes, like I wouldn't use Becky, or I wouldn't use like Godcatcher. I've never used Iceman yet.
You should. Iceman's fun.
Okay, side note, when I played in the mod PDM this past weekend at the time of this recording, I faced 3 Iceman teams.
Iceman is very different now than he was in 2019.
Actually,
that's probably the episode for a whole different podcast.
Yeah. I was just going to say this. He has a lot more supporting pieces now, I think.
I just think it's different, but we should actually do that. We should take an episode of the podcast and just talk about like Iceman as an example.
All right, write that one down, because you know me and you will tend to forget.
Yeah.
So I've never tried an Iceman team yet. I think I've tried the Atom once, which is spin down, spin up to do 2 damage, I believe, when he spins up.
Yep.
And that's what's that keyword again? Awaken. So
Awaken
is an awaken ability. And I've used that once. So those types of high meta cards and stuff like that, I try not to use. I try to find other cards that can do it, that really nobody's either playing or it's just kind of out there. Everybody knows I like playing Mystique, and I'm going blank on her. I'm going blank on her subtitle. So the Mystique I am talking about is Mystique Oh Bitter Sweet. No, Oh Bitter Victory. It is sweet. But anyways, Mystique gets +1 A and +1 D for each other character die in the field zone. So that's my field zone and my opponent's field zone. So you count up every single active character, each individual, and that's how much plus she gets. Plus A, plus D. So usually I'll pair her with Overcrush card, or I'll pair her with Unblockable. So she's just different. Like, I'm just trying to find different cards than the normal meta cards, or what other people are playing.
Yeah. So I mean,
my team building.
And I think maybe what we could do as well is maybe when we finish this episode series and talk about all the different parts of a team, then maybe we could talk about how we would put our own team together. No?
Yeah, I said yep.
It sounded like you said no. I was like, okay, all right.
Maybe
idea.
Maybe we should plan it like before a WDA or something, and we can build it around the team and see.
Sure. There was more to Nick's message. He had also said that it was a great episode as always today. So thank you very much, Nick. We appreciate that. Even if he gets called out for not using Team Up.
Then that goes to that's not his style.
Yeah, it's not his style. So he said it also just doesn't present challenge in team building. It's just field as many affiliations as you can and attack, straightforward. And with Super Rare Spider-Man, which is subtitled Team Up, it makes it really easy to optimize, because the Spider-Man gets all the affiliations that are on your team at the beginning of the game. So you could put however many affiliations that you can put on cards on your team, and he gets all of them. So you just have to field a Spider-Man, and you have like whatever, a zillion affiliations.
Unfortunately, though, Team Up's golden, so it'll have to be a golden time to do that.
Well, there's other ways to do things. And then he says he's more of a direct damage fan. He says combat damage is just too much work. You have to attack and they could block, but then you have to worry about cycling the die back and losing field presence since you lose a blocker. Bleh. So I like that. Bleh. So that's where churn's important. If you're doing combat damage, right? So we talked about win conditions that have combat damage. If your die goes through, then you need a way to cycle it back around. So that's something important to keep in mind. So that's where churn, we talked about today, ramp and churn, that becomes important. We also heard from a newer player, Ninja Sushi on Discord. So Ninja Sushi sent us a message after the last episode came out saying that Ninja Sushi was listening to the podcast now, and my team building could use some work. And then followed up with that they'd been listening to the Triple D podcast at work, and they're really enjoying it, just finishing up the 3rd episode, and has recommended it instantly to the group I play with casually, and it's given me some interesting combos to try out. So super glad that you're enjoying the episode, Ninja Sushi, the episodes, the series. And thanks for recommending us. We appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so then we have one last one from past guest and good friend, Craig Heubner. Hey, Craig. Hope you're doing well.
Craig.
It was nice to see you at the last Dice Social. So Craig talked in this article. So he left us. So up until this point, we've talked about the email we received from Andy May. And then we've talked about the Discord messages we received from Ninja Sushi and from Jackalope Bam. So Ninja Sushi has been sending messages just in the Dice Masters online Discord channel, in the general or the media channel. And Jackalope Bam sent me a DM through Discord. And Craig wrote us a reply to our podcast post directly on our website, dm-north.com. So there's lots of different ways that you can get a hold of us. So Craig says, in listening to your show, I was wondering if you are working through the philosophy that has been used in other competitive games since you started with WinCon as the main topic. And then here is how things have been summarized for me in considering team building. So we are not using any philosophy, Craig. We just sort of picked a spot and went with it. But it does not surprise me that there are philosophies when it comes to team building or deck building in various competitive games. So Craig talked about bread. Are you familiar with bread, Kim?
I can't say no. I was not.
Okay, so it's typically like made of wheat.
Oh, right. Yes. And
bread. I bake it.
We're talking about bread in other terms.
Oh, okay. So bread, B-R-E-A-D, is a general guideline strategy for prioritizing a team build where a player thinks about how to cover all these aspects in order of importance to get a final team together. So that's interesting. I think this is a like a Magic the Gathering philosophy. But basically, BRED is an acronym for bombs, removal, evasion, aggro, and dudes. So I hadn't heard this before.
Yeah.
So let's, go through it. So bombs say a bomb is a character or action with significant power, which with some certainty would win you a game. So a bomb could be considered a win condition. Removal is a character action or global ability which removes a threat or is an option for controlling a threat essential to remove it from hurting you on a turn. Evasion is something that provides you with a chance of getting past natural defenses of your opponent. Examples could be characters that can't be targeted or characters with ability that prohibits them from being blocked. Aggro is a character or action that play with limited consideration for defense by quickly and without much other strategy wearing down your opponent's life total. Godcatcher. I'm pretty sure that's what that would be considered. And dudes, characters that support the other 4 areas by giving you options for energy or characters needed at a low cost. I would love to hear what you think about this, if even fits with the Dice Masters team building, or how this should be adjusted to fit a team for building for Dice Masters. So I had heard of bombs before, but I don't think I'd heard of the rest of it.
Yeah, I heard none of these. I've never heard of... Actually, I've never heard of any acronym really for Dice Masters, if we're talking Dice Masters.
Yeah, I don't think this is necessarily for Dice Masters. I think this is just generally for...
Like, for deck building games.
Yeah.
Games.
Yeah.
Gaze.
So, I think it's an interesting concept, and honestly, it doesn't surprise me that something like this exists. But because I have such limited exposure to competitive games, that it's not something I was aware of.
I feel like I've heard another one before, and maybe one of our listeners maybe know what I'm talking about. Like a long time ago, I feel like one had, been around.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I can think of that I've heard of, again, I think really came out of Magic the Gathering, and I've heard it a little bit in, I think I've even heard Jimmy talk about it, which is Jimmy from WizKids, which are like Spikes and Timmy's, and I can't remember the other name.
Timmy's was it.
And I don't remember what they are right now, but each sort of play, it's like you categorize player types, and a Spike would be someone who's very aggressive, very aggro, goes in for a fast win. Whereas, the other people, there's Timmy and somebody else, I can't remember. There's 3 or 4 names. Unfortunately, they're all typically male-ish, but I guess competitive.
That's okay. We can have a Jocelyn and a Kimish.
I think typically competitive gaming is still fairly male-focused from what I've at least seen at local stores. Hopefully one day that will change. But anyway, so I'm off track. I don't remember the names of these people.
Sure,
I just remember Spike and Timmy.
Help us out.
Yeah. But, there's different player types, and the idea is that game designers they design cards or dice or what have you, abilities for the various different players types to make sure there's something for everyone. And there's like the player that wants to win fast and hard, and there's the player that wants to try something different and something off the wall and different types of things like that. So I don't have it in front of me, and I'm sure I could just Google it, but I not really worried about it. So anyway, so this is similar, I would imagine. And I think that there probably is a way for us to adapt something like this for Dice Masters. Whether we use this acronym of BRED or something different that, we invent, who knows? But let us know what you think. Do you think that this format of BRED, bombs, removal, evasion, aggro, and dudes is something that would help you build a Dice Masters team? Maybe let us know when this podcast series ends.
Which we're not sure how long it's going to be. So.
because we've just decided that we're just going to keep doing this until it's done. Right?
Until what? Dice Masters is done?
No, like this this I was going to say it again. This podcast series about team building. We're just going to keep going until we run out of things to talk about.
Yes, I think articles has been in our brains for the last couple of days. So.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be a lot more than 4 or 5 episodes, though. So we hope that you like it and that you're on for the ride.
Yes.
So, okay, so I think that covers off all of the mailbag. Was there anything that I missed, Kim? Was there anything on the YouTube?
How do we always forget to check the YouTube?
I don't know. The YouTube is your purview.
Oh, I see.
I'm blaming you for it. I'm looking right now.
So am I.
Yes, here we go. On
Donnie,
the note,
probably, right?
Donnie. Yep. Everyone's fave hero, Donnie. Hi, Donnie. Infamous, famous Donnie. Not infamous, famous. On the note of unblockable, having teams that go really wide can be a win condition. I think that is a fair comment. So if you think about, that we talked about the very sort of entry level basic understanding of win conditions in Dice Masters at the beginning of the last episode, which is I have more attackers than you have blockers, so I get damage through. Mm-hmm. So the concept of going really wide, which Donnie's talking about, which means essentially that you have a lot of characters in the field, could be a win condition because your opponent just runs out of blockers.
Yep. And if they're heavy, like heavy as in they're very high in attack, and you notice that your opponent's characters are pretty weak defense, if you push, they're going to get KO'd and your characters are not. So the more you do that, eventually they're not going to have a board for you to go into and pretty much end the game.
Yeah.
So, and I've seen that happen. I don't play that style, but I've seen it happen. It works.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember playing in a weekly dice arena last year sometime. I don't play in it a lot because of my work schedule and my sleep schedule. But I happened to be available that particular week, and I played a Godcatcher team because it was a red event. It was designed to be very competitive in preparation for an upcoming something. So I came out with a Godcatcher team to try it out because I hadn't played with it before. And I played against Nick, who was playing a version of a team that's sometimes referred to as Fish Slap, which is designed around one of the Atlantis dice, which says when you field a sidekick character, you draw and roll 2 dice, I think. I don't think we talked about that one.
Which one is that?
It's an Atlantis.
We talked about
Wealthy Kingdom. It's the one we didn't talk about.
Oh, okay.
When you field a sidekick character die, draw 2 dice and roll them until end of turn. So the idea with that is you field as many sidekicks as you can, and that allows you to draw 2 dice and roll them. So you're ramping and you're churning and you're just continually fielding dice. And that is often paired up with a Black Widow. Is it the Widow's Bite? Black Widow.
Is that when you field, you get +1A?
Yeah. Black Widow, the Widow's Bite, which is from the Avengers Infinity campaign box. When fielded, your other character dice get +1A until end of turn. So the idea is hopefully you field sidekick, you buy something, you draw and roll it, it rolls on an energy phase, you field it, and then you buff everything with a +1 attack. And then eventually you get to this point where you've got like this huge field, and your opponent's probably got like 1 sidekick or something. Kicking around, maybe 2, maybe a character or so. And they just overwhelm you. Sort of similar to Team Up.
Yeah. Team Up, right? I guess that is a overwhelming team that I have used.
Yeah. So it does overwhelm your opponent because you have, as many sidekicks in the field as you can, plus as many affiliations as you can. And then Team Up gives them all a big buff, and you've got a wide field, right?
Right.
So that is another type of win condition. So yeah, thanks, Donnie. It was a great suggestion.
And I think that's it.
If it's not it, we'll bring it up on our next episode. Yeah. So now you've heard of lots of different ways you can contact us. You can leave us a note on our YouTube page where we post our episodes every Monday afternoon. You can leave a note on our episode page on dm-north.com under our podcast post, like Craig did. You can reach out to us on Discord, like Ninja Sushi or Jackalope Spam, or many others that have done so in the past. Or you can send us an email, like Andy May at dpodcast@dm-north.com. You can also check us out on all of the social medias. You can find us at dmNorthTV. And until next time, on a double and dice.